How's it going, Giants Nation? One Giant Rebuttal here, back with another video. And as you can see, we are going to rebuttal Vincent Rapasardi again. I swear I don't hate him. It's just, out of all the YouTubers I follow, he's the most controversial, and I'll probably end up rebutting most of his videos. Because my biggest bone with him is he calls himself Big Blue Unbiased. If his name was anything else, if his name was Big Blue, I hate Eli Manning, I don't even think I'd have a problem with him. But his name is Unbiased, yet he's biased. He's biased toward Eli Manning. And yes, I understand in the past that he, defended Eli, and then after last season, he was like, okay, I'm off the train. I get it. But for the most part, let's get into it. And we're starting 11 minutes in because obviously his video is not all about Eli. His video was, the first 10, 11 minutes was about the Kareem Hunt situation, and domestic violence in the NFL as a whole, and how players shouldn't be suspended. But if you're interested in more of that, by all means, go to his channel and check it out. But we're going to start 11 minutes in, and I'm actually going to go to about 15 minutes in this video because my bone with him is in those first couple minutes. I know he goes on and talks about Eli Manning, but I've already rebutted his points many times on Eli Manning, so it's pointless at this point.
Claim your door, and you're going to write a paragraph in the comments section about how I'm biased and how I'm this and how I'm that. At the end of the day, you're going to respect what I say because it's coming from a perspective of I'm just trying to be as realistic as possible. Again, you may not like what I have to say, but you know it has the right intention. You know where it's coming from.
Okay, he's right. But to call yourself unbiased, no, you're biased. Are you trying to be unbiased? I guess, but when your videos are about the same thing largely, then you're not unbiased at that point. You're biased and you're borderline insane. And I don't mean insane as a negative notation. It's just you keep talking about the same thing yet expecting a different result. And that's my biggest knock on you, because if you were to cover the team fairly as a whole, and obviously you're going to get into it more as a video, I don't even think I'd rebut your video, but you don't. But you call yourself Big Blue Unbiased. I mean, that's my biggest gripe with you, honestly. I like what you do. I like to hear every perspective, but when you're blatantly wrong, I'm going to call you out on it. And obviously, we're going to. So let's continue.
That's the biggest thing when it comes to being unbiased for me, is giving people perspective. Giving perspective instead of just screaming and yelling because Saquon Barkley didn't get enough carries. Okay.
Oh, by the way, Vince, if you haven't figured it out by now, I would really like to name my channel Big Blue Unbiased because I'm more unbiased and more realistic than you are. But unfortunately, my channel's One Giant Rebuttal. So you beat me to the punch, I guess. Let's continue on.
Okay, well, let's put perspective on that. Hit 5 touches, 11 yards in the second half. The Giants had 5 possessions. 3 of the 5 went only 3 plays. You can't trust Eli Manning, your $20+ million quarterback, and your $90+ million wide receiver, and your second round, one of the best slot receivers in the game, Sterling Shepard. You can't trust those guys to put up more than 3 points against 2 corners, Shandon Sullivan and Devontae Bowsby, who had never started an NFL game before, and they couldn't.
All right. Like you go on to talk about, yes, Eli Manning's limited. And no, Eli Manning is not a $20 million quarterback anymore. Obviously, this is a little bit condescending in a way. But do I trust Odell Beckham Jr.? Yeah, he's got the yardage, and yeah, he's got the touchdowns. But no, I don't trust Odell at all. He just took a shot at Pat Shermer for the play calling. So obviously, he's got a problem with it. But he'll go on to make his point about Pat Shermer as well.
Score more than 3 points in the second half. Again, perspective. But anyway, let me start with the blame game. And I don't really like blaming. I'm not a big blame guy, but you got to be realistic here.
Sorry, Vince. I don't mean to pause too many guys, but you do play the blame game. You play the blame game in almost every video. Every video has some negative notation about Eli Manning's game. May it be his arm, maybe his lack of mobility, maybe it's a lack of awareness, maybe he didn't hit a guy in a certain play that you wanted to hit him. Whatever your gripe may be, you're one person that you blame for the Giants' entire problem is Eli Manning. So, yes, you do. Let's continue on.
And I'll explain why I put more blame on Eli Manning than other people when it comes to the Giants. Pat Shermer, let's start off with him, right? You might say, oh, Pat Shermer, I don't like his in-game decisions and this and that. Okay, fair. Maybe you don't. That's fine. But I'm not going to judge Pat Shermer yet. I am not going to judge him yet because it makes no sense to judge him at this point. Oh, what?
It does. It does make sense to judge Pat Shermer. Because as a coach, you are what your record says you are. And the record says we're 3-8. And if you're just going to sit there and blame Eli Manning, okay. But I realize there's a 53-man roster. As he goes on, forgets the fact that it's a 53-man roster or blames the fact that certain players aren't here. But I'll get into that further. But we're just talking about Pat Shermer right now. And Pat Shermer's lack of time management and lack of play calling, mixing up the play calls, I would say, has led to a lot of stalls in the red zone. Granted, you're with a limited quarterback, but he worked with a limited quarterback in Minnesota. And let's face it, the Casey Keenum in Minnesota is not playing like the Casey Keenum in Denver. Okay? And Casey Keenum is a limited quarterback. You can't do everything with Casey Keenum that you could with an Aaron Rodgers or a Drew Brees. Or let's take a lesser quarterback, a Ben Roethlisberger. So what point are you trying to make? Let's continue on.
Why does it make no sense? That's so stupid. What, you won't? No, here's the deal. Pat Shermer took over a 3-13 team with the second overall pick in the draft. He inherited a quarterback he obviously didn't pick if he inherited him. He didn't pick his quarterback, an old 37-year-old quarterback who is probably the most limited quarterback in the NFL based on mobility, arm strength, and situational awareness, as we saw.
Oh, and here's a little problem that you don't put right there, and I'm sorry, guys, for pausing it, but it is what it is. I just have a gripe with his 4 minutes in this video. You say that Pat Shermer inherited. Don't forget, this is a two-way street. Pat Shermer wanted to come to the Giants. He interviewed for the Giants job. He knew who he was going to have at quarterback. So he's not so innocent, my friend. He didn't inherit anything. He chose to come to the Giants. And the Giants looked him up and thought, okay, yeah, we might like to have him as a head coach. So it's a two-way street, buddy.
On Sunday. The team got rid of Jason Pierre-Paul, Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, Weston Richburg, Justin Pugh, Devon Kennard, Romeo Okwara, including this year, Damon Harrison and Eli Apple. And although Eli Apple played terribly on Thursday, I still don't think he's a bad player. Obviously started on a very good defense in 2016 over Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, who was moved to that slot nickel corner position. Still had a great year, DRC, but still. They thought highly of Eli Apple, and he played well his first 2 years. Nothing special, but he played well. Anyway, you're now subbing in some of these guys with rookies. You're subbing them in with B.J. Hill and Grant Haley. Lorenzo Carter is starting to get snaps. You got Quadri Henderson.
All right, Big Blue. Big Blue Unbiased. I'm going to call you out, Vince. I'm going to call you out right now, okay? That whole statement right there, all the players you listed off, is a bunch of BS, okay? None of those players, besides Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie, and he wasn't doing it last year, were not performing when they were on the Giants. I don't care what they do on Detroit. I don't care what they do on Tampa. I care what they do on the Giants. And they were not performing on this team. That's why they moved somewhere else. And sometimes when players go to other organizations, they play better. It happens. But it doesn't mean that they would play this well on this team. Some of them didn't fit the 3-4. Eli Apple was the number 10 pick. Do you truly believe that Eli Apple is a number 10 pick talent? Because when you pick a corner at number 10 or below, or even I would argue the top 15, you better be getting yourself a shutdown corner. Eli Apple is not a shutdown corner. It was a lame duck pick by, what's his face? Jerry Reese again. And that's the biggest problem. And you skip over this. Video after video after video after video. Jerry Reese is the reason this team is where it is. I do not care how bad Eli Manning plays. You cannot have 7 years of lame duck drafts and then all of a sudden, poof, be a good team. I don't care if Dave Gettleman would have kept more of those guys or not. Jason Pierre-Paul on this team would not have 8.5 sacks because he'd be asking to blitz or affect the quarterback from the linebacker position, which is not his position. He is a 4-3 defensive end. This is a 3-4 scheme. Your argument is invalid, my friend. Let's keep going.
And J. Will Davis returning kicks. I mean, you have the roster turnover is just incredible. Josh Morrow, Kareem Martin, Curtis Riley. You bring in Jamon Brown midseason to start.
All right. Jamon Brown was better than Patrick Omameh. Then you talk about Joel Davis and Quadri Henderson as well. You're not going to have what? You want Odell? You want Saquon kicking kick returns? I don't get what you're trying to say there. And then you talk about Morrow, and then you talk about not B.J. Hill. Who's the other one? Kareem Martin. Did you know in limited snaps, if you would have taken Kareem Martin's numbers last year in limited snaps and doubled them, because he had limited snaps, don't forget, it would have been equal to what Jason Pierre-Paul gave you. Kareem Martin is not a bad player. Kareem Martin and Morrow are both 3-4 defensive ends. 3-4 defensive ends, their job is not necessarily get after the quarterback, it's occupy space so the linebackers in the scheme or the interior pressure can get to the quarterback. That is the point of a 3-4 defensive end. Again, if you're going to call out people and you're going to call out things, you have to look at the whole picture. You have to understand what you're talking about. 3-4 defensive ends are largely defensive ends that are there to occupy space and stop the run. That's their job. Show me a 3-4 defensive end and their job is strictly to get after the quarterback, and I'll laugh at you because that is the 3-4 outside linebacker's job, not the defensive end's job. If he can get to the quarterback, he will, but generally they're there to occupy space and stop the run. Let's continue on. Or you might sub in players that are a little bit better at pass rushing, like a Mario Edwards Jr. I want to touch on that point too.
Chad Wheeler was undrafted last year. He's not a very good player. Center situation, you got Spencer Pulley now. You got a rookie, Will Hernandez, who's played well but still a rookie.
Do you remember who the right tackle was last year, Big Blue Unbiased? Bobby Hart. Who would you rather have, Chad Wheeler or Bobby Hart? I'll take Chad Wheeler.
So how can I judge a coach when he's taking over a 3-13 team to begin with, and Dave Gettleman kind of took away some of his really good players?
Dave Gettleman didn't take any of his good players away. He didn't have good players to begin with. What you stated as good players aren't. The only one that's good is Damian Snacks Harrison. None of them are comparable players. Maybe Jason Pierre-Paul, but not for $20 million. He was the 25th best defensive end last year. Do you pay the 25th defensive end $20 million? No, you do not. So don't sit there and act like these guys were all-star players. I get not every player on your team is going to be an all-star player, but not every one of those guys were putting up the production last year that they were this year. And you know what they also did? They weren't playing up to snuff. They weren't paying up to their potential here because they quit. They quit because of your boy Ben McAdoo. And that's why they're not here. Because Dave Gettleman probably saw effort he didn't like and shipped him off. So you have to take up the whole context if you're going to sit there and talk about the Giants and talk about the realistic situation that they're in. And you're not doing that. And you could talk about Eli Manning till you're blue in the face. I've rebutted you on 1,000 Eli Manning points. I don't need to anymore because I won. Let's continue on.
and replaced a lot of them with rookies and younger guys with almost no productive experience. I know that's probably new.
Yes, the only way to get productive experience is by getting experience on the field. The Giants, in the beginning of the season, your argument, valid. Now the Giants are, 13 games into the season? Your argument is totally invalid because after the bye week, they went from a team that was looking to contend, possibly go to the playoffs, which obviously you weren't going to go at 1-7. They transitioned to a team that is now rebuilding. And what do rebuilding teams do? They give away or get rid of players that they don't need so they can get the younger players behind them experience so they can see what they have in the future. And the more experience Lorenzo Carter gets, BJ Hill will both lead the team in sacks, by the way. Both have 2 sacks. Now, obviously, that's not a lot, but they have limited snaps. They're not taking as many snaps as they possibly could. They're not necessarily starters. So, the way you build a team, I don't know if you know this, Big Blue Unbiased. Newsflash, you build it through the draft. You don't build it through free agency. You'll never see a team built through free agency. The Rams had a core in place. They had Jared Goff. They drafted Jared Goff. They drafted some of those linemen. Obviously, they picked up, what's his face last year? I can't think of the right tackle there. And they had Todd Gurley. And that's their core. But they drafted most of their core. They even drafted Jamon Brown. But the dude that was starting behind Jamon Brown played up to snuff. So Jamon Brown lost his job, and that's why he was released. The Giants picked up a very good right guard, Jamon Brown. But that's besides the point. You have to realize this. If you're going to talk about the team as a whole. You can blame Eli Manning you're blue in the face, but I will argue till I'm blue in the face. It's a 53-man roster, and each person's accountable. Some more than others. Let's continue on.
Term that I've just created, I've just coined, but yes, productive experience. What does that mean? Players who have produced. Pretty simple, right? Pretty self-explanatory. What do I expect? I don't expect him to go 12-4. I kind of expected 3-8. This is what I expected. I can't look. Is he going to be the perfect head coach and make every amazing decision? Of course not. And no head coach is. I have to hold back when it comes to grading him and completely judging him.
Well, here you go. Next year, you can't hold back. So what's the difference if any criticisms that you might be holding back now, you say now? Because saying it next year if the Giants go 3-8 or they don't start off that well, what's the difference? Because you might not have Eli Manning to blame it on next year. So I'm really curious what you're going to blame it on. Anyways, I'm going to stop the video here because I really don't care what he has to say after this because he does go on Eli Manning. And his points in Eli Manning aren't valid anymore because at this point, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if he wants Kyle. It doesn't matter. Anyways, if you like what you see, please like and subscribe. Also, if you're curious about Vince's video and you want to hear more of it, by all means, go to Vince's channel, Big Blue Unbiased, and check it out. This is One Giant Rebuttal signing off, and go Big Blue.